Well, it's been nice knowing you, buddy. Howdy guys, so today I wanted to take you along as I upgrade my PC. Now I know I haven't covered a ton of that here, but I just kind of like showing you guys what I'm excited about, the stuff that I just like working on. I'm going to be upgrading my CPU and motherboard from an Intel 7700K going all the way up to an AMD Ryzen 9 3950X. So that's a pretty big difference, a pretty big jump between cores and threads. I'm going from 4 and 8 all the way up to 16 and 32. I'm hoping to keep this CPU for quite a while. That's one of the reasons I justified the pretty big purchase. And I just wanted to show you installing this on a relatively small case. This is the InWin A1. I know I've gotten at least one question about that. So let's just kind of go along for the ride and show you how it goes. All right, let's go. Now moving along to the actual hardware which I ended up choosing. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to go with X570 specifically, even though the boards were definitely more expensive, is because I wanted a NVMe Gen 4 SSD. I was going to go with the Corsair one, but at the time of purchasing it went up by like 50 bucks. So I chose the Seagate Firecuda 520 2TB version. I was running a 1TB normal SSD, SATA SSD, and that was okay for some stuff, but I definitely was kind of scrambling to find places to actually keep some bigger files, especially video files. So 2TB is probably going to do me pretty well for quite a while. Now, this is going to be definitely overkill for most people. You really don't need that sort of speed. I just wanted it to be kind of quote-unquote future-proof, as much as that term is overused. Now moving on to the actual memory modules. This was not my first choice. Again, I was planning on getting some Corsair LPX 32 gig at 3200 megahertz kits, but they were sold out basically anywhere I could find. So I ended up going with whatever I could get shipped next day, and it happened to be this Patriot kit of 3000 megahertz. I don't think the speed is going to be anything too crazy, but for what I'm doing, I don't really need it to be that insanely fast. But at the very least, it does look nice and fits the rest of the theme. Moving along to the star of the show, the Ryzen 9 3950X. I debated for quite a long time whether I would get this or the 12-core 24-thread 3900X. Ultimately, I just figured if I was going to be spending this kind of money, I might as well just go balls to the wall and get the top-of-the-line processor. Because regardless, I knew I was going to keep this for quite a while, at the very least the same 3 years that I kept the other processor. Now for cooling, this is actually the heatsink that I was using to cool my 7700K. This is the Noctua NHD9L, and I kept that CPU at a decent overclock of at least 4.7 GHz throughout its life, going up as high as 4.9. Now this was obviously probably not going to cut it for a 3950X, and I still didn't want to go with an AIO or water cooling at this point, so I decided to use the other CPU cooler that I happen to have on hand for a different project, and that was the Scythe Fuma 2. Now this is quite a bit bigger than the NHD9L. The fin density seems like it might be a bit lower, but it's just physically larger, so I figured it would be a better bet. Now I didn't want to go out and purchase another heatsink just because I already had this one on hand from a past server project, so I figured that I would go ahead and use it since I already had all of the Ryzen mounting. My only concern here was with memory and if it was going to collide with the heatsink, since I was using a bit taller memory modules than I was before, but thankfully that was not the case. So now you saw that everything did manage to actually fit inside of the case. I was a bit worried about the memory there just because I kind of just eyeballed the heat spreader size, but it did happen to fit with the air cooler that I was using. Now that air cooler, I just happened to choose it just because I had it on hand. It wasn't something that I specifically chose for this, but I just didn't want to go out and buy something if I already had something here. If I have concerns with it, then maybe I'll consider upgrading to something else. But I've just been going back to air cooling for the past year or two, just because I was kind of fed up with AIOs and custom loops. Custom loops are just a good bit of maintenance and a lot of extra cost for blocks. AIOs, I don't know if maybe I just had terrible luck, but I've had the pumps fail on them, or the integrated cables on them just begin to fail and not really work. So hopefully the ones that are out nowadays are better and more reliable, but I was just kind of fed up entirely. So with air cooling, it's just really nice. It's just reliable, trustworthy, and I haven't really had any issues with that. Off screen, what I did do was add a side intake fan that has to be a slim fan, and I swapped out the fan that came with the cooler with a Corsair HD 120 just to match all of the other ones that I already had in there. Wiring all those was kind of a nightmare, so what I ended up doing was installing a Corsair Commander Pro and wiring all the fans up to that as much as I could. I don't know that I could have installed that with a 2.5-inch drive also installed at the same time, unless you maybe got creative. But if you have any questions about that, let me know. The other thing that I was kind of a bit worried about was the motherboard. I've seen some reviews about this board specifically having weird issues, but if I'm not having issues with this, 3950X, I don't think other people are. I mean, of course, it's kind of luck with what kind of board you get, but I haven't had any problems installing the M.2, the screws, no issues there. Some people were saying that they were stripping or just rounding out. Just don't over tighten stuff, especially small tiny screws. If you have any questions about that board, really any other hardware that I've shown here, or even the Corsair Commander Pro, anything, leave it down below. Other than that, my last note is that you might be saying that I still have a GTX 1070 in here, and that looks, I guess maybe a bit funny paired with a 3950X, but I've kept the CPU for probably 3 years or so, and I just haven't found something worthwhile to upgrade to. The performance, difference hasn't been that impressive for the amount of price increase. So I'm really hoping that AMD and NVIDIA's, big releases this year, if they, happen like, they're rumored to be, I'm hoping that they will actually present something that's kind of exciting, like a decent upgrade, enough to justify me spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Hopefully not more than 1,000. We'll find out. Okay, that'll be all from me, guys. Feel free to follow me on my socials. Thank you for watching. You have a good day.